Make sure my hair looks good. Great. Welcome to Freelancers, the freelance podcast where we answer all of your burning freelance questions. And I am joined by someone I have never met. He lives several thousand miles away from me in the sunny, beautiful country of New Zealand. Actually, I don't know anything about New Zealand. Maybe it's not that sunny right now. But Max,
It's currently cloudy.
looks okay. Yeah.
It's usually sunny. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm joined today by Max Paterson. Correct? That's your last name, Max.
Paterson, actually.
Paterson. Okay, sorry. Yeah, we
Yeah.
only
No,
have
it's a
ever
pleasure to.
we've only ever corresponded via email, so I was unclear on that pronunciation.
Nice.
I probably should have done my due diligence. We're off to a pretty good start here. But Max, thank you for joining me. And
Thank you.
I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself here in just one second. I know you from some YouTube stuff and from some filmmaking stuff, and that's about all the background I am willing to give at this moment in time. So, Max, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and some of your background?
Sure. Well, yeah, kia ora, I'm Max. I am in New Zealand at the moment, but I've been spending the last year and a half in the UK. What I mostly do is a combination of narrative short films and promotional and event type corporate work. But all the passion lies in directing narrative pieces. So we know each other, I think, through some loose YouTube connection. I remember you created a Light Leaks pack or something that I quite liked. But yeah, that's me.
Cool. And Max, you are how long have you been doing like filmmaking or freelancing? How long have you been working in this industry?
It's about 4 years now. I believe it was August 2016 is when I got my first paid gig.
Cool.
So yeah,
It's always a good day.
so right. Yeah, it was. I was very lucky actually. That was my second project to work on, and it was to date probably still one of my favorites.
Cool. What project was that?
So I grew up in like a tiny little town, and it was basically a promotion for the entire town. So there's a guy named Jordan Luck who was like a big muso back in like the 90s or something, and it was kind of like a bit of a music video, but showing off like a whole bunch of businesses. But what was really good was it involved like 30 odd businesses, which then all wanted, they're all sort of old fashioned. They realized, oh shoot, maybe we need a video. So,
Yeah. 2016. Maybe we should get on the video bandwagon.
yeah. We're sort of living in the dark ages.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm from a small town too. I know exactly how that is. Cool. So, Max, I know that one of your passions, and I know it based on looking at your website and knowing you kind of digitally, and also you just said it out loud like 2 minutes ago. But your passion is kind of narrative filmmaking, which is a little bit different from the corporate, commercial style event promo work that you and I both do, and we'll talk probably about how those relate in a little bit. But what for you? What is so interesting about narrative filmmaking and that sort of creativity? Why did you kind of choose that as a career path?
Well, I mean, it's really like it's such an open field. Like there's so many different directions you can go in narrative. It's really the world's your oyster. Obviously, you have a whole host of different genres, but I think what we're realizing more and more is like we don't necessarily have to conform to these old sort of structures of short films or feature films or whatnot. Like people are experimenting with VR and 360, and there's like the format is endless, the genre is endless, and the way that you can tell your story is endless. And I think that's really special because at the end of the day, it then comes down to what are you wanting to tell, why are you wanting to tell that, and how, which is really special. I think in particular, like compared to the likes of more corporate type work, where there's often someone that has a specific agenda, they want to use it as promotion for something. Hopefully, not always, but hopefully narrative stuff is generally led by a passion for it, yeah.
Cool.
Certainly that isn't always the case,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Cool.
that's the
And
intention.
I'm going to, I'm not even going to give you a chance to shamelessly plug your newest project. I'm going to do it for you. Max, you've just finished up, or maybe sometime recently have finished up. It's a short film, if I'm not mistaken, called Missing
Yeah,
Pages. Am I getting all of that correct? Um,
that's still correct. Yeah.
and yeah, and just correct me if I'm wrong on any of this stuff. So, you know, you've just finished up this short film. Could you tell us a little bit about that? Maybe you know what the idea is, as much as you're willing to divulge at this point in time, because I know it's not you know out in the world at this moment. But as much as you're willing to tell us about the film and the idea behind it, how it came to be, and anything else that might be good for us to know?
Yeah. So this is a piece that we shot in August of this year, and just recently finished it. I might just go ahead and spoil all of it, to be honest, because
That's okay. Go
it
ahead.
is short and I can't talk about much else
Yeah.
otherwise. So, but it takes place in an audition room. So this actor walks in for a fairly normal audition. He's fairly nervous, and very quickly he realizes on the opposite side of the table he sees his long lost father, who's abandoned him as a kid, and we basically see everything looking towards this character Archie, and we don't have the context of knowing what he's looking at, and we see this audition basically fall to pieces as emotion starts to take over him. And right at the very end, do we actually realize that all these words that he's saying, because he's going off script all the time, he's just blurting out things. It gets quite heated. And then suddenly at the end, we get this shot and we see that it's his father. And we realize, shoot, everything he's just said, he was actually talking to his father. So it's this really interesting mix of hopefully the kind of thing that you can watch twice and get a totally different experience out of,
Cool.
but also, yeah, a mix of sort of raw emotion and a deeper meaning. But yeah, that's sort of the crux of the story.
Very cool.
Um,
So it takes place in a single location, then, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Cool.
very simple, really, as far as like set is concerned.
Yeah.
It's about, is it 4 shots or 5 shots? One of which lasts for about 3 minutes. And in a very simple, drab looking, I heard someone recently compare it to a jail because it's got these metal bars. So it's got this really, really gungy looking audition room, which is perfect. It fits
Great. Yeah.
the story perfectly. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And anyone that's ever been in a theater or film production will know that the audition rooms are usually a little rough around the edges, you know?
they tend to be
Yeah.
not where the budget's going.
Yeah.
It's a bit cheaper, isn't it? Yeah.
Cool. Well, that sounds like a great, it sounds like a great concept. And I've actually watched the teaser for it, the teaser trailer. I'm not sure what you're calling it. And it looks great. And the concept I think is really interesting. Is this something that, you know, you had like heard of, or was it maybe a script that you found from someone else that you were interested in doing? How did this project kind of come to be?
Yeah, so this I started writing the script for this. I didn't get very far, probably all of 2 or 3 pages in, knowing sort of the scope of how it would look, but not necessarily knowing the direct way of executing it. And I actually met up with this Costa Rican producer in London, who I kind of pitched the idea to him, and he was like, "Oh, maybe I can give it a crack at writing." And he's frankly a genius, and I'm hopeless at writing. And he sort of turned my my rubbish into solid gold, and took it from there. I think it stemmed from there was a particular location that I had in mind that we didn't actually end up shooting it at, but it stemmed from this idea of sort of two separate meanings colliding, like your personal life and your professional life colliding in the worst possible place. Um, but yeah, we're really stoked with so Adam Azati is the guy who acted it, and he really pulled off this because it is quite a complex thing to be able to I guess portray an emotion that the audience doesn't quite realize yet.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's kind of how the story came to be.
Cool.
Was yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine that, and I have a little bit of a background in acting, but I don't really do it anymore, other than acting like a jackass around my house or something. But I think that the nuance that it takes to be able to pull off like a double meaning sort of production like this is probably, it probably means you're pretty talented, you know.
Mm, mm.
Other than the 26 seconds I've seen of the teaser, I would assume that this other Adam 2, as we'll call him, I would assume that he's probably pretty good at what he's
Yeah.
doing. And so you
The
said that
amazing
you,
thing about this one was we had three Adams on the shoot. So
oh my gosh.
we had an Adam,
uh,
which was our DP, and then a Dan is Spanish for Adam. So.
yeah, very cool. And Max, this takes place in, you filmed this in London, correct? You said you've been there for a
That's
while?
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice. So, I want to kind of jump off our planned itinerary for a minute and talk about um, the the creativity, this creativity aspect of filmmaking, and I'll make a more cohesive question in just a second, I swear. But um, with there being the limitation of just one location for this, was that something that you decided on early on, or was it a constraint of just time and budget and other things? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
No, I mean this is great because this totally plays into like I guess I have a bit of a theory with short films and in terms of structure. I think you can't at all approach them the same as you would a longer piece, and that structure is in some way, shape, or form a setup and payoff. And I think that lends itself quite frequently to having a really simple story. I mean, I definitely feel with shorts at their core, unless we're talking 20 minutes, I think if we're talking under 10 minutes, like one location, if you do more than that, it's starting to build on a complexity that you won't do justice in explaining or breaking down. So I think purely from a functional standpoint, um, yeah, this type of short film absolutely works best in just one location. From a practical standpoint, I mean, I'd probably say that was a second consideration. We did actually have a little bit of difficulty finding the right location just in the middle of COVID,
yeah.
because although a lot of places were technically open or there was no one in them, just so many places were figuring out how they can operate, and weren't able to, because we were looking at doing it in a theatre at one stage. So
Yeah.
the audition, although it's never mentioned, is a theatre audition rather than a film audition, but it could really go either way.
Yeah. Very cool. So, yeah, and I will say it's probably tough right now with thinking about cast and crew too. I mean, you said you had a DP and a producer and an actor, and if you're directing, that's 4+ people right there. So you've got to find a place that's willing to host, what, 4 or 5 guys, men and women
Sure.
around, which I would imagine will be tough. So you finished up this short film in August, a couple months ago. What are your, what's next for it? What are your goals with this short?
Yeah. With this one, I think really just trying to use it as a not so much a proof of concept as like a proof of work. In the same way you might use a proof of concept to make a feature, use this one as a proof of work to create more work that you can get funding from. I think one of the difficult things, and this is why I'm interested about talking about it on this podcast, is making short films a viable, sustainable thing, because I think everyone knows that it's traditionally not much of a profit. You're almost certainly always making a loss with a short film. So, but I don't think it necessarily has to be a means to an end. But I think in this case, this is very much like, hey, with this team, with this amount of dollars, with this amount of time, this is what we can output, and pitching that to places and being like, cool. So if we, if we take that up the next level, then we can work on that. As it pertains to actual like next projects, I'm currently developing a couple other scripts. One of which sort of follows this really like personal, lonely journey of a woman, kind of dealing with suicidal thoughts, but also seeing she on her walk home, she sees a homeless man that's sadly passed, and sort of deals with this. I guess tackles some of this heavy stuff front on. I think I've realized that I seem to really like heavy stuff. Yeah, so there's a couple stories, one there and another piece, but yeah, definitely looking to keep a lot of the same crew. Adan, the producer, is fantastic. He's really great. He wants to go bigger. I'm still self-conscious and want to keep them small projects.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel you, man. At one point in my life, I think I entertained the idea of being on film sets, and I think that it takes a lot of kind of like soul searching in a sense. I don't even
Sure.
call it that, but like to realize that like there are so many other avenues out there for you to be a part of filmmaking and films and cinema
Yeah.
without being on the like Hollywood Walk of Fame or having like an Oscar contender, or even just working on like big budget films or larger films. I mean, there's just so many things that you can do, from filming skits with your cell phones and your buddies to, short films that, have a smaller cast and crew to, other shorter films that have decent budgets and stuff to them. I think there's a whole range of things that people can do, and I think it's really, I think it's great that you are realizing that, or kind of have realized that. And I don't want to call you young, but at a young age, because a lot of people, I'm well into my 30s at this point, and it's one of those things where like it's not been a recent discovery of mine, but I'm like it took me much longer than it should have to realize that short films and video production are a viable career path.
Sure.
You don't have to go to Hollywood. You don't.
I mean, this is the great thing about the film industry, though, is you could like. There's almost no point is too late. Like probably most directors are in their 50s or 60s, so you've got plenty of time no matter what age you are. But
yeah, it's true.
I think I've realized personally that like for me it's not and I think this is actually really important. It's not, there is no end goal of trying to be like super successful or something, because I think that will almost always be unsatisfying and futile whether you reach it or not. But I think for me, it's the sort of destination with avoiding anything too cliche is very much just the practice of creating pieces of art that you actually really enjoy and believe in.
Yeah, that's
so
great.
I think, yeah. So as long as hopefully you can, live comfortably, which I think for me means incorporating a lot of those other freelance works to help pay for the narrative stuff. Hopefully that will start to transition the other way around. But yeah, then you're not going to spend your life wishing that you became a high flying director.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's great. So Max, are you hoping to get this film into festivals, minus just the proof of work, and kind of showcasing that this is a viable option for clients or for yourself? Are you looking at like festival routes or anything like that?
Yeah, so we've been submitting it currently to a couple like short film hosts ahead of festivals, so places that they can play the short film along the likes of like Film Shortage and director's notes and stuff like that. Just because that's quite a nice place where I think a lot of people congregate, which sort of short film lovers tend to sink their teeth into those types of websites. Are currently submitting it to a couple small festivals. I think that comes secondary to the proof of work type stuff, but that certainly helps give it a bit of credibility. I mean, I've never been entirely enthused by festivals, just because of hearing every possible story of, like, I mean, Nolan's first film, for example, he submitted it one year into, what was it? Was it Cannes or something? And it didn't get in, and then he submitted it the next year, and then it like got some massive award. Like it's so much time, place, and connections and people that the artwork itself isn't necessarily the only factor, or necessarily even the main factor. Which is a bit of a depressing thing to say, but I think that's always come secondary for me.
Yeah.
But yes, but
yeah,
but
cool. No, I wasn't sure. I know a lot of people like that route, and I'm not one for I'm not one for awards in general. I mean, I like them. It's a nice accolade to have, but I think probably just doing freelance and very little of the creative narrative work on the side. Like I don't get those in my day job, so like it's kind of foreign to me. But I do know a lot of people, particularly in the film projection route or the film route. They really like that, and festivals are a great way to get your work seen and stuff like that. But I was just kind of curious.
And they do absolutely give you credibility. Like you've got a laurel from a big festival when people do listen. But I think that's happening less and less now. I think that has been really significant over the last few years, but I think that's less important now than before.
Yeah, and one thing, and only this is coming from being a judge on at several film festivals or helping out with them or whatever, and knowing what I know from my friends that have submitted things is that you can submit a film to a festival, and then it's essentially you're not allowed to have it public until after that festival. So you might have made this like amazing film, and then you can't do anything with it or showcase it on YouTube or Vimeo or wherever for like a year, sometimes even like a year and a half. And I think that would be like heartbreaking to me, at least, to not have
like
that.
the premiere status on a lot of them. Yeah, a lot of those big ones, which is the super annoying thing is like, they have to be like premiere only. But if you want to get it into multiple festivals, not all of them can premiere for the first time. Sometimes you can do like a premiere for a country or whatnot, but I absolutely agree. You don't want to, I mean, within a year, you start looking back at it and spotting all the things you would have changed. So,
yeah. And then you're like, why the hell did I submit that film?
Yeah, exactly. Take it. Don't want it at your festival.
Yeah. I don't know how I would deal with that. I'm blame it on me being like a red-blooded American, but I'm like, I want it now. Like I want to. I get done with like recording these videos, and then like in like a day and a half, I'm uploading them and hitting publish. I can't sit on things for like a month or 2 months, let alone like a year. In some cases, so
especially when it's something so kind of comparatively tiny. And I think also like the prestige of films has disappeared a little bit in recent years because people are producing like YouTube videos every single day, and like TV shows are turning over so quickly that I mean, like, who wants to hold on to a 5-minute video for a year? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't feel anywhere near as special as before in terms of wanting to hold on to it. So I think I agree.
It's just that like oversaturation of the market probably, and the fact that like everyone with a cell phone can make decent quality films or has the opportunity to, at least,
which is great. But I think you do have to take that extra step to help sort of build up a little bit of significance for it. I mean, that's kind of what I'm trying to do with this is talk to people like yourself, get it on other websites that hold some sort of weight. So it's not just thrown. I didn't want to just throw it into the ether of a gazillion other YouTube or Vimeo films that will, it's sort of what's special about it then?
You're just gonna hit publish.
Spend plenty of time on it. So yeah.
No, that makes sense. And I think that's a good route to go, rather than just assuming that it'll do well for being out in the world. You want to like get some interest and stuff like that. Cool. So Max, are you still in London right now? Are you back
No,
in the?
I'm currently in Auckland, so I'm
Okay.
on my last day of quarantine. So I've
Oh,
been
great.
quarantined here for 2 weeks.
Good. I mean,
Nearly
that is
it.
gonna stink, I'm sure, but it's good that you're taking
I'm pretty familiar with them now.
yeah.
They're an
Uh,
old sport.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a wild ride here, and man,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not gonna get too much into it. I might
Mm.
turn off like 4 of my 5 subscribers or something. But
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about as I bump into my camera and computer. I want to talk a little bit about um, a career in filmmaking, and so both you and I had mentioned earlier that an interest in, or at least in um, yeah, an interest in being able to do short films and things like that. You know, and then and then funding those with like the day job, bread and butter sort of work, like the
Sure.
freelance work,
Sure.
the corporate and commercial stuff. Um, were it a viable option, would you even do corporate or commercial work, or would you just focus strictly on narrative work?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. If it could be entirely narrative, yeah, 100%. That's where the passion is. I think I've been sort of trying to figure out, is there a way that you can viably do it for short films? I think it is possible with features, but let's be honest, you gotta sort of build up a little bit more towards that. I think the only way to really make it sustainably work, and it does mean a lot of work, is just lots of sponsorships and grants. But the problem is, I mean, you end up spending your whole year submitting stuff, and ultimately, I mean, you're still keeping fairly small resources. But yeah, so I think for me, it will also be a complementary thing. What I've realized though is that like I've started putting a lot of my like basically passion projects and stuff on my website, because even though they're not necessarily corporate work, and which kind of is the primary purpose for my website, a lot of people will come across them, and that will actually be a reason for them being interested in creating an ad. I remember doing this sort of joke project just out of frustration or something, just to get something done, of a fake car advert for like some crappy beat up car of my
Yeah,
sister's, just as a bit of fun. And we took it around to this gorgeous Banks Peninsula area in Christchurch at sunset and downtown and stuff, and basically treated it like a high-end car
yeah,
commercial, except it's with this 97 Nissan, I can't remember what model it is now, but that was the
yeah.
video that probably got me the most work, because people shared it with their friends, they found it funny, and they're like, hold up, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe you could actually make something for us. So
Yeah.
so I think it actually does help out it does actually help out in both directions. Yeah, and it keeps you creatively thinking, because I think sometimes you can get stuck into a rut of fairly traditional practices with corporate stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I will look at some of my stuff and I'm like, man, I have made the same video for like 3 years in a row. Um,
sure.
and I think there's a balance that I struggle with. If if I can be honest about it, I struggle with it, where you want to get it done, assembly line fast, because you've done this type of project before. You want to get in, get the talking heads, get the B-roll, get out, edit it in the way that you know how, get done and get paid,
Sure.
versus or balancing that with maybe adding a little bit of like cinematic flair to it,
Sure.
or that creativity. I mean, I think it's a really tough balance, at least for me personally. I don't know if you ever feel that way.
I think I can relate, but I think that does also pertain to the budget of it. I mean, the stuff that I do is fairly low budget, and I think I've realized that, like, shoot, if I were to spend the same amount of care and attention and planning, which is horrendous, that I do to short films, to adverts or whatnot, like, you could actually turn this into something quite a bit more special.
Yeah.
But I think I mostly haven't had the opportunity of spending that much time, because simply that the cost of the overall production is smaller than would accommodate for that. But yeah, I think also to some degree the egg's got to come before the chicken, in the sense that like no one's going to hire you for the work that they can't see yet. No one's going to hire you on a promise. They can only expect that you'll create as good a thing as you've produced so far. Whether that be true or not, you've got to give the example before you can get the work.
Which I totally agree, and I think that's a great reason to make a short film, or you know, in certain cases make a spec commercial of like an old 1997 Nissan you know, model car that they probably don't make anymore. And I've had you know, I had a similar experience. I was kind of moping around one year early on because you know, here in the U.S. in Illinois where I live, it's like white and snowy, you know, so for like 3 months out of the year there's really very little production that goes on because it just looks like it's just gray and white out. And I was kind of moping around because I didn't have any projects, and my wife was like, well, why don't you, like, you drank like 4 beers last night, why don't you make a beer commercial while you're drinking those? And I was like, it's a great idea. So I did. I made like a spec beer commercial, and I have since landed projects from that. You know, and but I will say and this is something that, going back to the budget and time constraints and stuff, is like I spent like 4 days painstakingly setting up shots and doing all of this stuff, and then you know, you get contacted by a client to like make a similar video, and you're like, okay, well, this will take X amount of days and this amount of time and whatever, and you tell them a budget and they're like, whoa. And you know, so you got to like work within like those weird kind of parameters that they set, which can be a drag, but you know, it's all part of the business. I don't really have any real complaints about
I still feel like that's ultimately a positive trajectory. I mean, I think you're going to start drawing in bigger clients when you show off that kind of stuff. I mean, you can, I think, very easily fall into a trap of being known to do something for a certain price, like, you know, oh, here's that really affordable filmmaker. It's like that's not a good reputation. You want. Being reasonably priced is almost a bad thing, because it means that you drive in that kind of work. But,
I will say I feel like I'm lucky enough to not be considered the affordable filmmaker or video producer in this area, at least, which is nice. Sometimes I wish I were maybe a little more affordable and had more regular work, but I'm also like, you know, I price myself competitively and just fine. But it is a weird, like, I think you make a really good point there.
I mean, I guess it could swing either way. It depends what you want, but I'd rather be doing less and putting more care and attention to them.
I totally agree. So I want to talk about kind of the correlation or the similarities between traditional freelancing, video production, commercial work, things like that, and creative narrative work. And I had seen some lifestyle projects that you had worked on that I thought were very cinematic. And other than just creating maybe cinematic visuals, you know, what are some other like similarities between those two kind of industries, between filmmaking, narrative filmmaking, and traditional corporate and commercial work? You know, what are some overlaps that you've encountered working in both?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, they are actually incredibly similar. I'm going to try and avoid all the buzzwords.
That's okay.
But I think ultimately, you know, they should be both story-driven. They should be both visually interesting in some respect, or at least serving the story in their visual language. And yeah, particularly short films have a lot to do with like adverts, because you are having to tell some sort of setup and some sort of payoff in a short amount of time. I mean, the format is more akin to short films than features, certainly. But yeah, I think there's very little difference, except that adverts have an agenda. With shorts or narrative stuff may only just be for the sake of creating artwork. So I think you've got to be careful in the way that you deliver what that agenda is. That it, in many ways, you're kind of trying to make sure that it doesn't. You're almost kind of trying to hide it in a strange sort of way, in the sort of seep it out through something enjoyable to watch.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that would be really only the significant key difference is there's an agenda to corporate type stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It is kind of weird when you want to, make something a little flashier, or a little more, add a narrative flair to it. And then you're still trying to sell stuff. There's like times when I feel like a little dirty, trying
Sure.
to weave those two, because I'm like, should I use my cinematic powers for corporate, profits
Right.
or whatever. I mean, corporations are the ones that hire me. Businesses hire me, and I
Yeah.
really truly
Yeah.
have no problem with a business wanting to sell their services or goods or
Sure.
whatever. But it is kind of a weird is kind of a weird way to try and get into it.
I
But
think it's easier the more you believe in what you're selling. I think that the more you can stand behind what you're selling to people, the easier it is to just be totally upfront about it.
mhm,
And I mean, yeah, I think it's common knowledge that if it's a good product, or good service or whatever, you don't have to sparkle it up too much. I mean,
yeah,
obviously, you paint it in the best light that it is, but hopefully, it can sort of stand out for itself to some degree.
yeah. No, I totally agree. That's
Like
a good
this.
point.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be any sort of shame in that. I mean, I think if you're probably feeling uncomfortable or a bit funny about something, then maybe that's a sign that that's not necessarily the right
Yeah.
project. Um,
Yeah. I had to do some, I didn't have to. In my younger days, when I was a little more strapped for cash, I agreed to do some commercials for a local politician. And it
mhm.
was someone with whom I did not whatsoever align politically.
Right.
And I
Right.
remember just hating. I spent like a day with this person and their campaign manager, and we were filming all these things. And the whole time I was just like fuming in the back of my head about
Right.
allowing
Yeah.
myself to do this, for this person. And then after that,
It's an interesting one.
yeah, I'm not going to do anything that I don't
Yeah. Like, don't
actually think
credit
is
me.
good.
Don't
Yeah,
put my name in the video.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I kind of told myself, I was like, unless you believe in the product, or you believe in the person selling the
Sure.
product, or service or whatever, I don't get involved, in
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah, there's definitely been a number of videos that I've just never published with my
Yeah,
name on them.
yeah, um,
I'm like, either that's just like something super uninspiring, or
yeah.
just
Um,
let it.
yeah, I've got depending on the client, I've got a couple of different accessible by link only folders on the internet.
Right.
So I can show people if they're looking for something within certain budgets, or whatever. I can
Right.
send a link
Right.
for these, and I'm like, well, here's what I'll do within this budget, but it's not something that I want to advertise for, because it's not my
I did
best
the
foot
same thing with
forward.
real estate, actually. I don't show any of my real estate work, but I've still got like tons of real estate videos
Hmm.
that if someone contacts, I'll show them. That's because that's not the type of work that I want to be doing.
Yeah,
If I get an inquiry for it, there's a good chance depending on it, I'll probably accept, but I don't want to be promoting that as what I do.
yeah, yeah,
Among other things. Events as well. I've taken off all the event-based stuff
yeah,
from my website.
yeah.
But yeah,
Those ones are
I think
tough.
it's smart.
Yeah, I still do events. I don't advertise for them as heavily as I used to. Um, I
Sure.
really almost don't advertise weddings almost at all. But
Right.
I end up
Right.
doing like one of those a year. It ends up usually being someone that I know, and they talk me into it.
Sure. Sure.
For
Sure.
if any of them are listening, I enjoyed filming your wedding. But between you and me, it's usually for a price that I think is way too low.
Sure.
But I'm like,
Sure.
I like you, I'll do it.
Weddings are a mission. I
Yeah.
mean, respect to people that do it, for their entire career. But
Yeah, oh yeah. It's like,
yeah,
well,
it's not for everyone.
8+ hour days of filming, and then all the editing, 30+
There's a
hours
lot of
editing.
editing involved. Yeah. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
feel like as a videographer at a wedding, like whenever like it comes to the end of the day at the reception and the photographer gets to just like chill a little bit more and just take a couple stills every talk. But then that's like, you're like kicking to another gear. Like when everyone's starting to chill down for the day, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's quite intense sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I filmed a Serbian wedding last
Oh,
summer,
wow.
last winter, about a year ago, actually. Winter for us, so it was pretty cold out, and it was a very traditional one, so it was like all of this like crazy stuff. I mean, it was like full on party all day long.
Wow.
Filming from like 10 in the morning until like 10 or 11 at night, and it only like ramped up like as the night goes on. There's like
Yeah.
more accordion players coming out of nowhere, and they like at various points, like a bunch of them, they all had blanks in them, but they had guns that they would just like shoot into the air.
Oh, wow.
So instead of like clinking on glasses, I don't know if that's a thing in New Zealand where like the bride and groom will kiss, or the married couple, the newlywed couple will kiss. Everyone
They would fire their guns.
They would just start pulling guns out and like shooting them in the air, and you're like at all times.
Goodness me.
Yeah, it was
that's quite something.
That was pretty wild wedding, but so I don't advertise that I do those because
sure. Serbian weddings specifically.
Yeah, I don't. I absolutely will not. I might never do
I specialize in Serbian weddings.
Yeah, I might never do a Serbian wedding again, to be honest.
Okay.
But yeah. So, yeah. So Max, what's oh, actually, I have a follow-up kind of question to something that we were just talking about a minute ago before I move on with some of our other pre-planned questions. Let's talk about, when you're approached by a client for a freelance project, not like a filmmaking project. What are some ways that you try and add your own like narrative flair to a project like that? Does that question make sense?
Yeah. I think I've been trying to transition a lot more to providing the creative for a project, the creative being the idea, the story, the concept behind it, rather than, I think quite a lot of the stuff that I do, the client will already have something in mind. I mean, I think this is also, it depends on what sort of crew you're working with. Like, obviously, it's a different story if it's everything on your own versus if you've got a few crew involved. I think often I'll try and just sort of like respectfully argue different perspectives, in the sense that, like, sure, we could just do a talking head, but, if you want to stand out from your competition, look at what your competition's doing. They've all got fairly conventional talking heads with B-roll. Maybe we can, I don't know, maybe we can tell a client story or whatever that may be. So I think, often I'll try to like see things through their eyes in terms of the practical, generating leads or whatever their goal is, but also all the while making sure that it's helpful for their brand. It's not just going to be another vanilla video that no one actually wants to watch. And I mean, I think there's so many, like, particularly when we're talking like 3 minutes plus videos, there's got to be something pretty significant for people to actually watch something, say, that long, which is kind of crazy that 3 minutes is long. But like, unless someone knows the business or is really invested in it, or it's like an educational video, most people aren't going to watch a 3-minute ad just on their own accord. So I think there's actually, you can absolutely tell a 3-minute or 5-minute or 10-minute ad, but you've got to be creative. Maybe it is just a short film that's telling the founder's story, or I don't know. It could be anything. But I do try to argue, and I think this is something that I'm more working on now than previously. But try to argue for how can we stand out of the box a little bit. I think I've just merged two phrases there: stand out and be outside of the box.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I love it.
How can we stand outside of the box?
Trademark, Max.
Yeah, very good.
You heard it. You heard it here first, folks.
Something that does work from both a brand and sort of lead generation.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's really good advice, and and it's obviously something that, as I said, I don't want to say struggle with, but it's something that like I have to try and balance between, okay, what does the client want? What's going to be the best for their brand, for their video, for their project, versus like, you know,
Sure.
what I want. And there's a lot of compromise that comes with that. And um, you know, I think you could be good at this, but I think that it's like experience that comes with like, or that you get experience um, with doing that more often and finding out
Sure.
where those compromises are. So if, you know, you're like, oh, I bet this client is going to come back at me on, you know, they're going to want a talking head for sure. Like, how can I still add some of my own creative flair to it? You know, so,
Sure.
okay, I'm not going to be able to win the talking head part, but maybe I can do like a killer job on like the B-roll part of it,
Sure.
or
Sure.
something like that. I think that's that's good advice for people trying to navigate that. And I think we all do. I mean, no matter what point in
Yeah.
your career you're in, I think that that's something that you're going to encounter at least.
Something I really enjoyed recently was doing a handful of videos where this producer was effectively subcontracting me for his projects to head up kind of almost the entirety of the video side of things. He was just primarily handling the business side, but he already had the concept and the pitch in mind for these videos. So it was really nice kind of taking the backseat a little bit and not necessarily being responsible for that side of things, knowing that I can actually focus entirely on, I can still direct action and that specific shot and whatnot, and you know, well, anything to do with the video, but the whole business and concept side I could just forget about, which I enjoyed a lot more than I thought I would. I guess, I don't know, I guess I'd probably, if I could avoid, like, I don't know, just leaving all the business side of things out of it, I would probably quite happily do that.
Yeah. I feel that way too
Sadly,
sometimes.
that's not too easily done. But
No,
yeah,
I feel like the older I get, the more business I actually deal with rather than I deal
sure,
with like it's like 55% business, 45% actual video production now. You know, versus like when you first start out, it's like the opposite of that. It's like 10% business because you haven't learned how to
sure.
do all these things yet. But yeah,
Something I learned with him is he managed to get like every single nut and bolt written down. Like, I think there's a lot of things that I would just rely on conversations over the phone and still have like a contract and stuff, but he would write down like absolutely every single detail, which is really good because it meant that I think people are just super aware of what they've said, and if there's any potential dispute or something, you've got it all handy. Not that you want to like create any difficulty, but can be
yeah,
like, oh, cool, this is what you said, so we'll probably stick with this for now or whatever, and like super clear with what revisions are happening at when, and we're going to do, you know, X amount of hours per revision or whatever.
yeah,
Whereas I think I've tried to attack things a little bit more personal in the sense that like, okay, ultimately I'm just trying to create something that will be useful for you.
yeah.
You know, here's what I've agreed to do, but I'll be a little bit flexible around the corners. You
Hmm.
know, because
Yeah,
you're dealing with, for the most part, just one or two people.
yeah,
But I think he did a really good job of yeah, making sure that everything's tight, and you can still be flexible within that. But I don't know. It's a much more secure way of operating.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've gotten burnt by not getting contractual stuff down before. Um,
sure,
and I think the problem I have is that, you know, I'll meet with someone, a client, and be like, "Oh, I think you're a great person. You know, let's grab a beer. We're best friends now.
sure,
I don't
sure.
need a contract. You know, why do best friends need a contract?" And then like cut to like 3 months later, you know, we're in an argument about it. And this is like an isolated case, but you're like, "Ugh."
Sure, sure.
But
It does happen.
yeah,
I mean, it's thankfully rare, but it does happen.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, that would be. I think having a producer like that, or you know, someone to handle the details would be tremendously helpful, really.
It's also a buffer, I think, in the sense that neither of the client and sort of the creative person have to have too much interaction, which sort of gives just a little bit of I don't know, a safety net from both angles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And it is kind of if you've got someone in the middle who especially knows like what they're doing and is good at it and is willing to kind of let the like, they're the ones where like if something happens, they're the ones taking responsibility. Um,
Yeah.
that is always nice. I feel like you find that a lot starting out, when you're like a younger, videographer, like out of college or whatever, where you find a lot of positions like that where someone wants to hire you to do that. And then also, I think maybe like as you progress through your career, I feel like I've gotten a lot more of those recently, where I'm hired out from like a marketing firm or another agency or something. And then they just want me to film it and I don't really have to interact with the client, like they are my client, not
Sure.
the end client.
I'm just trying to remember where I've heard this from, and I can't remember. But there's someone that said, sort of tying into this, like existing relationships, is that your best price should be given to your oldest client, in the sense that you start off super tied down with everything, and ideally you're hitting that top rate that you're aiming for, and then every reoccurring project with them, you can start bringing off the reins, which from a safety perspective works fine. Once you've built up more of a relationship, there can be a little bit more of a casual
Right.
relationship, which I think is practical for them. But also, reoccurring clients is cheaper to you than new clients.
Oh yeah.
And I think sometimes there can be a trap of like, oh, this client I really want to work with, or this brand I really want to work with. I'm going to knock down my price so that they will pick it up.
Yeah.
But then if you want to work with them again, you can't raise your price back up on them for the same type of project,
No.
So,
and they're like, hey, we've already worked together. Why are you?
Why have you added 300 quid? Yeah.
It's pretty wild. I've had that happen before where I've dropped my rates down or shaved some services off to land a client, and then 2 years later, I'm like kicking myself because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just like losing money left and right compared to what I should be making. Because
this is the one that I want to do. Like this is the thing that I love.
Yeah.
And now I'm kind of crippled myself because the more projects I do with them, the more sort of potential loss that I've had.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Maybe I should just stick to working with people that I hate. And I'm going to go back to that politician and see if he'd let me film some more ads for him, because at least then I won't be upset. I will make sure I have a contract.
Charging.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll be happy charging.
It's not a bad idea though, in terms of putting a little bit more for the projects you're less inclined to take on. If you have the liberty of sort of letting a few more go. Like I think as stuff gets booked up more, to start adding on a bit of margin. And I think this is the natural progression of how you raise your rates anyhow, is when you're getting booked more, that's when your rates start to go up.
Yeah.
So it's a sign that you're worth what you charge.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. So Max, what's I'm gonna get to some of our softer ball fun questions as we kind of wrap up. But what's next for you? What do you have in the works? What are you working on now?
Yeah. Well, I'm home in New Zealand for a couple months. One of the things I'm really looking forward to is a workshop down south for a few days, which will be really fun. So that'll be working with youth and adult classes.
Oh, cool.
Mostly getting people up to speed with cinematography. But like in terms of actual practical projects, there's a lot of things that are sort of early days. I'm just like doing a mental check of what's realistically smart to say out loud. And
oh, sure, yeah. You can say whatever you want, and then I'll just bleep it all later in post.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
This whole like a minute of. So currently in the UK, I'm like a media producer producer for a small organization down south, which I really enjoy. So I do that part-time and freelance part-time. The only reason, well, that's certainly not the only reason. I should rephrase that. But a big bonus of that, particularly this year, is the stability.
Yeah.
So it's still on a contract basis with them, but prior to that, I was just full-time freelance. But yeah, there's a couple brands like Habitify that I'm currently developing an ad for, which will be really, really fun. There's potentially like a World War II feature that I might DP. I had a tour of their set recently. Really
Cool.
Really nice set. I don't know. There's all sorts of random bits. I feel like that's pretty poxy answer.
Yeah.
But yeah. I guess I'm trying to more head into like when it is ads, trying to make them more creative.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just various different projects. A lot of it has been thrown into this murky, who knows when it will be made stage, thanks to good old friend COVID.
Yeah.
I should try and reduce that word too many times.
It's okay.
a trigger word now.
I'm gonna get banned on YouTube for using COVID too many times.
Oh,
No. I'm just.
Okay.
Max,
Should we replace it with
Max said COVID too many times. No. I totally get it. Cool. So anything else that you want to chat about? Oh, let me ask. Let's say if people want to check out some of your work, or maybe watch your short film after it comes out. Where can they do these things?
Thank you for asking. It means I don't sound like a jerk. Valley-films.com is the best place to go. It's got the little dash. I've been trying to get valleyfilms.com, but someone's hogging onto that domain.
Oh no.
Valley-films.com /short films for short films / missing pages. You can pretty much go / whatever you think it will be, and
sure.
Everything's really easy to access there. So yeah.
Very cool. Wonderful. Well, Max, I don't want to take up any more of your time. Is there anything else you wanna talk about or cover or ask me while we're still recording?
Well, thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you for joining me.
Can I flip the question on you, just because I'm interested in your life
go ahead.
as well?
Go ahead.
What's new and exciting for you that's in the works?
Let's see here. Well, there are. I've got a handful of little projects I've been working on. A lot of editing right now, just with as I mentioned, given the weather outside, there's a lot of editing that goes on around this time of year for projects. So I'll probably try and get some of my actual paid freelance editing projects done. I've got I'm trying to pick back up on producing educational content, like these podcasts, some of my like tutorial videos for YouTube and stuff. So I've got a couple of those kind of planned out, and then if it ever gets released, which they've been done for a few weeks, but and maybe longer by the time this particular podcast gets dropped, but I worked on a bunch of real short pre-roll ads for YouTube for a local like board game business, like a board game like mom and pop store. And I shopped there for years, and they had reached out about making them. So it's a bunch of really short ones. They're super funny, really goofy stuff, and they turn out good. They turn out really well. Actually, I'm very proud of them, but they have not been made public yet. So I'm waiting. I'm like, I don't want to pester the client and be like, hey, I know you already paid me, but why don't you release those videos a little faster? So I'm waiting for those. And then, I'll have, I'm trying to land this client here in town that he's made a robotic coffee machine. So it's like a food truck that's like got robots in it, and it like will serve you coffee like something. So it looks fascinating. I've been trying to land this organization as a client. We'll see how that goes. And then, I do some workshops too. Not anywhere as exciting as youth and adult cinematography, but it's like how to edit it.
Adult cinematography. I don't like that.
Mature. Hold on. Adult. filmmaking. How about that? There you go.
Sure,
But
sure.
the local library hires me to teach classes on
Oh,
like
that's
Adobe
really
Premiere
cool.
Pro and After Effects and things
Yeah.
like that. So just a lot of like random little things like that. Uh, and then also because it's winter, I'll probably mope around for a couple of days and then make like a spec video about donuts or something.
Nice.
So yeah, we'll
Nice. I
see.
like that.
We'll see how we go. Thank you for asking. I
Have you
appreciate
made
that.
any ads in the snow? Sorry, I've just got to ask that now.
Have
Since
I
you
made
do
it?
live in a snowy part. Yeah.
No, no, I have not. Actually, I did one a couple years ago for one of the like local, another community nearby. They have like a cutesy, like kind of downtown area, with all the shops
Mhm.
and cafes and stuff. And they make, they have lots of um, Christmassy, holiday themed stuff that goes on. So we produced a holiday commercial for them,
Great.
when there was like snow on the ground and all the Christmas trees and stuff. That was the last holiday themed one that I had done, or Christmas snow themed one that I've done. Um, but otherwise, no, I don't do a ton. I'll take my drone out and get some other fun footage and things like that. But nothing snow related from a client perspective. Yeah, everyone kind of hunkers down with how chilly and snowy it gets.
Fair
So
enough.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, it's kind of it's usually pretty. Um, the December, January, and February for us is like, that's like I only earn like 10% of my income in like those 3 months
Right.
combined. Which is
Right.
fine. It's there's a lot of ups and downs with with freelancing. But yeah, it's
I'm
usually a
sure
pretty
it
slow
must
time.
double over summer then. Yeah.
Yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. There's usually a really big peak in like April, May, June. So the
Right.
very end of spring, early summer. The middle of summer kind of dies down, and then it's just almost too hot to film here sometimes too. We have such
Sure.
wild temp
Sure.
swings, and then at the end of summer, so like September, October, November um, are usually pretty busy again. So it's like a big peak
Right.
in the spring, evens out a little in the summer, another big peak, and then it drops way down in the winter.
Right.
But yeah, yeah. Thanks for asking. I appreciate that. And if anyone wants to check out any of my work, you can head on over to droidmedia.com. I don't think /missing pages is anything. I don't know. Maybe I'll make one now. I'll make it a page now.
It'll be a hidden page in there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll
Mm.
just have it send a redirect to yours, to your show phone. But
Nice.
anyway, Max, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure to
Yeah,
chat with
thank
you,
you.
and I'm glad to hear everything's going well. I'm glad to hear whether or not I include it in the video. I'm glad to hear that your health checkup that we just listened to off camera went really well. It sounds like you got a clean bill of health, and
Yeah. So,
hopefully that means you're back in action there in New Zealand for a while. And good luck with your workshops and everything going forward. And I look forward to watching Missing Pages when it's officially out for public viewing. And in the meantime, take care of yourself, and I'll talk to you later. Okay, man?
thanks, Adam.
All right. See you, Max. All right. Hey, man, I'm going to stop recording. Thanks.